everybody in America should be training jiu-jitsu. Whether you're a cannabis smoker or not, you should train jiu-jitsu. There's a gym by your house, so start training jiu-jitsu for the future of America.
What are you talking about?
Smoking in a bong or a blunt.
Grass.
Dank.
Reefer.
Was ist Job? It just means like pass the fucking joint.
Ganja.
Hash.
Fucking awesome.
All right, welcome back. So this week I'm talking with Kevin from the High Rollerz. I learned about the High Rollerz from my interview with Dupree a couple of months ago, and he told me that there is a competition where people do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under the influence of cannabis, and I of course had to look into it. It's a whole thing. It's really cool. They have a gym that's in Las Vegas, and it looks like they have events basically every month where competitors get high and roll. And so whenever you're listening to this, take a look at their information on Instagram or their website to find out when you can go see one of their awesome events. If you train jiu-jitsu, then highly recommend checking them out, going to visit their gym, and I look forward to thinking about how we can do cool research out there. So looking forward to this conversation. Have a good one. All right. Hello, Kevin. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today about the High Rollerz competition and the whole world of jiu-jitsu and cannabis. And so tell me about how you got into this and what you do with the company.
So how I got into it was I sold the cannabis. I was in cannabis for 20 years, and I ended up selling a company. When I sold the company, I was 300 pounds. I was traveling throughout the country. I was ridiculously out of shape and overworked. I started training jiu-jitsu right before my 40th birthday. I lost 100 pounds, and that was 3 years ago. I fell in love with jiu-jitsu, and being a lifetime cannabis consumer, I found the two intersected with High Rollerz. So I reached out to High Rollerz, and I started competing in their competitions as an athlete. And then I had an opportunity to purchase an equity slice, and that's what I did. And now I'm happily the managing partner.
It's amazing. I was an athlete for a long time and just didn't enjoy competing anymore. And but once I found like rock climbing, it was like, oh, I love this activity. And for some reason, it just like paired really well with cannabis. And so what was your experience with cannabis and exercise like before you got into jiu-jitsu?
It was null. I was so busy working and trying to and starting a young family that I just completely took my health for granted, and I kept my eye on the prize the entire time, which was, detrimental. Walking around right now at 185, I feel like I'm in the right frame. So I had 115 pounds of fat on my body that just accumulated from, living the traditional American lifestyle.
Yeah. Super easy to do that. Exactly. And that's one of the things that the researchers are starting to look into more, where I guess there's research to show that cannabis users actually have less % body fat than non-cannabis users, which is surprising because, like we were talking earlier, a lot of people just assume that cannabis users are like these lazy stoners. And it's like, that's actually just not true. And so it's really exciting to see events like this really starting to turn the tides on how we're even talking about cannabis with exercise. So yeah, one of the things that, I've listened to Joe Rogan for years, and it's like, there's something about jiu-jitsu and cannabis, or just like martial arts and cannabis that maybe it was biased because like the Joe Rogan kind of thing in my ear is like, oh yeah, like everyone is, getting high and rolling together. And is that true? Like, is that like just a common thing like in the jiu-jitsu world?
It's really, really common. But what's also common in the jiu-jitsu community is police officers and first responders, security guys who can't consume cannabis. So it's really funny to go into a jiu-jitsu gym where, I walk in and I smell, like I just smoked a joint because that's exactly what happened. And then I fight a cop for 2 hours. you know? So
Wow.
it is very, very relevant, but there's a massive section of the jiu-jitsu population that obviously doesn't consume cannabis and looks at it like a traditional martial art.
Yeah.
However, cannabis and jiu-jitsu play well together because we're not punching or striking each other. We're submitting each other, and there's a tap, and there's a respect to that tap. So once you get your opponent submitted, before they're unconscious, they're going to tap you. And that's, it sounds a little harsh, but it's actually a very light way to go about martial arts.
Yeah. So gosh, I didn't even think about the police officer, like that kind of realm of jujitsu. Is that kind of starting to change some of these like the military and police officer perception of cannabis use? Are people like starting to have more of that understanding?
Yes. As a matter of fact, last year we did our first show, because we do one jiu-jitsu production a month, and last year we did cops versus stoners. So
I saw that. That's so awesome.
We're so happy. We raised $10,000 for Adopt a Cop, and Adopt a Cop is a nonprofit that will give all police officers free jiu-jitsu training anywhere in the United States until they're a blue belt, which is generally 2 years. So we're really proud we were able to raise $10,000 for them. But it was also really amazing to see one bracket of police officers and the other bracket of stoners, go at it and battle. And then that also breaks down that stigma of jujitsu and, of cannabis consumers having some sort of a paranoia about police.
Yeah.
We knocked down after, 50 years of the drug war. That's a big tenet of High Rollerz.
Totally. Gosh, so cool. Like how it's as beneficial for both sides of the coin there. That's really cool.
It's an amazing event. Our next one, our Cops vs. Stoners, is going to be mid-September. So it's coming up pretty quickly.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, and this is like such an interesting intersection of cannabis use and sport policy as well, where it's like, all right, typically we've seen athletes like we're going to drug test them and like they better not test positive for weed or else they're not going to be part of this competition. And this is just like, they're all going to test positive for weed. Like that's what this is about. And so it's a really interesting way of looking at sport policy. I actually played a little video of from like the Vice thing about the High Rollerz event. I played that during a conference that I was talking at because I was this is super interesting that as more sports are starting to become more open to having cannabis use in their athletes, like the NFL and NBA, baseball, and this is just like the next level of how we can look at athletes and cannabis use.
Yes, it certainly breaks that stigma. Nobody could possibly watch a High Rollerz event and call us lazy. I mean, it's the peak of physical performance, and they're high while they're doing it, and they're very active and acrobatic, and it really helps athletes achieve that flow state that they're really looking for.
Right, and that's the interesting thing. So I've only done some like survey-based research right now about cannabis use and how people are using cannabis with exercise. And it's just like enjoying the exercise experience seems to be the biggest draw for people for like why they're using cannabis with exercise. But that flow element is something else that people were talking about. And that's something that we decided to include on our survey just because that's how people usually talk about using cannabis with exercise. It's like a flow state, but that's something that in the scientific realm, it's like, all right, how do I investigate flow state? It's like hard to kind of like, all right, how would I actually look at flow? And so can you like see that? Is there like a difference in the style that people are using when they're in the High Rollerz competition versus like another like MMA, like UFC kind of thing, or other?
Well, when you bring in MMA to the story, and you're talking about the physical blows to the head and the striking, it does change a little bit. We have a lot of UFC fighters that hang out at High Rollerz, and they're consuming cannabis for recovery, not so much for the flow state. Because it's a life or death battle when you're talking about MMA. Like they're really trying to murder each other. Where in jiu-jitsu we have that happy ending no matter what. There's a hug at the end.
Yeah.
So I think with jiu-jitsu athletes, it's a martial art, and that art part of it is really where the flow state comes in. When when all of your training comes into play at the same time and you're competing and you're not thinking at all, and you're just reacting and you're moving, that is what the flow state is. And that's what the jiu-jitsu practitioner is really longing for and training for. It's very easy to get knocked out of that state when someone's trying to harm you, someone's trying to armbar you or attack your leg. To keep your composure, keep your focus while being under pressure is what the jiu-jitsu cannabis consumer is looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes sense. I use cannabis with rock climbing, and I find that, and it's depends on the strain I'm learning, that like some strains are just like, I feel so safe going up as high as I can bouldering, but like there's other strains where I'm like, this is terrifying. I'm like actually like actively scared right now while climbing.
Yes.
And so yeah, I guess like with your own kind of personal experience or like what you've heard from other people, how are people finding like that right kind of balance of like using the right amount and like not using too much? Like how are people kind of talking about that?
Yeah, I think that's difficult for people as they're first consuming, and then also the method of consumption.
Right.
It is difficult, and I think it takes practice. You know, Jiu-Jitsu practitioners are generally training at least one time per day, which offers, you know, that the ability to try a strain, go light on it, go to practice, maybe go heavier the next day. Unfortunately, with cannabis and how it varies on each person, there is no direct answer. I think it really comes down to practice. Like, for example, doctor, like edibles, I could smoke cannabis all day or vaporize cannabis, but if I'm consuming cannabis through edibles, I'm in a very uncomfortable state. Whether it's a little bit or a lot, it doesn't fit with me. And doing jiu-jitsu on edibles is a horrifying thought to me. Horrifying.
Right.
And like a lot of people look at cannabis like that as a whole. But yeah, I think to answer your question, what it comes down to is practice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also to say like cannabis is not for everyone. But like if you enjoy it in your own life and you want to integrate it into like your own exercise practice, like awesome. Do what you're doing like in the real world, you know, outside of exercise, and then, you know, bring it into the exercise world. But yeah, it's definitely like a matter of trial and error and figuring out exactly what kind of works. And so at the events themselves, first of all, like just like what's the overall vibe like, I guess,
well,
for lack of a better word.
It's a great vibe inside of our place. We're always really proud of it. Nobody's drinking, so it's only cannabis consumption.
I love that.
It's a healthy crowd that shows up. The matches are very better and very, very entertaining. Our matchmakers do just a phenomenal job to bring like a lot of entertainment to the fans. So there's a lot of cannabis being consumed. There's nothing being sold, but a lot being consumed.
Yeah.
And
are people like, and I can totally cut this out later if you don't want to share this, but are people like bringing their own cannabis there, or is there like the strain that everyone's using that day?
No, we hope that one day that we're able to, through the regulatory system in Nevada, have cannabis available to our people. But as of right now, it's just what people bring.
Got it.
But Nevada is a recreational state.
Yep.
There's an abundance of dispensaries, and because there's an abundance of dispensaries, the prices are low compared to Florida or New York or some of the East Coast states that are really operating under like a monopoly system. Where here in Nevada, we do have a free market that allows people to go in and consume, what they want and try a lot of different things at once. Where in states like Florida, there's financial barriers to a lot of people trying different strains and trying different products.
Yeah. And that's like a whole nother can of worms that
we
can totally get into. It's who is this benefiting? I always think about, because I'm coming from a physical therapy perspective as well, where it's like if someone wants to use cannabis to deal with their pain or whatever, then they have to go into a dispensary, and it's like, all right, $50 to just like figure out if like, does this product even work for me? And when you realize like the variety of products that are available, it gets really expensive really quickly that insurance doesn't cover, and it becomes kind of cost prohibitive for a lot of people.
Yes.
But yeah, so So is smoking typically like the most common way that people are consuming for the competition?
It is. Smoking is like the old school way, and we also have one of our sponsors is Dr. Dabber. So we do dabs on a regular basis as well. Dabs have come a long way. I mean, from the butane extraction now to just doing cold water extraction, there's a lot of healthy ways to dab. So Dr. Dabber is always there handing out dabs, and that's a very popular way to consume, especially among the youth. Like I'm a little on the older side when it comes to jiu-jitsu when you're post 40. So I really like smoking joints, but the younger consumers are really going towards the dabs.
Interesting.
And using the electronic dab rigs to consume.
Huh. Yeah. That's really interesting. Do you notice any change, like any differences in how people perform when they're using dabs versus smoking?
That's good. I can never notice a difference. Some of the athletes say that dabbing gives them like a higher level of focus. And I would always kind of attribute that to the amount of THC that they're consuming in one dab. I mean, it's quite shocking. So I can't say that there's a difference between smoking and dabbing. No, that'd be very interesting to find out what are the long-term effects of smoking versus dabbing.
Right, exactly. And it's like where my, science brain goes is like, this is affecting your lungs. And like, obviously when you're in a fight for 10 minutes, it's like, that's cardiovascularly demanding. Like your lungs are burning by the end of that. And so I always wonder about like, would you be able to I like the long-term consequences of smoking versus edibles or whatever, like depending on the sport, especially for more of an aerobic activity.
Yes.
Aerobic. Yeah.
You need to figure that out for us.
So basically I interviewed one of my old students who's a UFC MMA guy named Dupree Stewart, and he's the one who told me about this event, and it just blew my mind. And now I'm like, oh my, like there's a whole world that I feel like maybe I haven't met these researchers yet, but like I haven't really seen any research specifically looking at cannabis use in the jiu-jitsu martial arts kind of world in general. But I was like, gosh, do I have like a new like business? I'm constantly thinking of business ideas. It's like my new business idea is like I can help people figure out what that right strain is, like what that right amount, like to like dial in that right amount that'd be actually good for performance. Or like, all right, when you did this, like your performance was trash. Like, all right, so we need to like adjust that from there. But yeah, there's so many like really cool new directions that we can go in terms of research, which brings me to the question I ask everyone, which is what research questions do you think are worth investigating?
So cannabis and recovery is a very hot topic. Cannabis and flow state is also a hot topic, but a lot of athletes that we see, both MMA and jiu-jitsu athletes, are using cannabis post-training to relax their bodies and almost like a anti-inflammatory in a way. I mean, ice baths and saunas are all the rage right now, and we do both. We do the plunge and we jump into the sauna and the whole thing. But doing that with cannabis, there's something very just satisfying and relaxing about that. And the jiu-jitsu training that we do is very, very intense. Like weird things hurt at the end of the day, like your toe, and then like your weird muscle in your back that you didn't even know was there. And puts all that at ease. Right. So I think where research really needs to focus is cannabis and recovery.
Yeah. And there's just so many different variables like within that already. When you bring up the ice bath and the sauna, it's like, okay, that's like another level of like what is actually leading to that better recovery. Is it like, is it the sauna? Is it the ice? Is it the cannabis? Is it all three together? And like the stress relief part of it as well. I mean, if you're in this heightened state of like, I might die, then like, it would probably feel good in terms of recovery to just like chill out for a little bit.
Yeah.
So that might help with the recovery as well. And so then what's the future of High Rollerz?
So the future of High Rollerz is so bright. We put on these shows once a month. We have a great team event coming up in 2 weeks in August. The Cops vs. Stoners is coming in September.
Okay.
We have an Army versus Navy benefit coming in November. We Jessica I, who's an ex-UFC fighter. She's our business partner in High Rollerz.
Okay.
She does October, and that's Ladies Night. So we do breast cancer awareness for Ladies Night. And then the future of 2023, we're planning, but lots of great jiu-jitsu, lots of great cannabis sponsors helping us put this together and trying to bring jiu-jitsu to a whole new level.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's all based in Vegas, correct?
Yeah, our headquarters is in Vegas. We draw athletes from all over the country to come and compete either in our open tournaments or our professional shows, which are once a month.
Got it.
And yeah, we're happy to have anybody, anytime they're in Vegas, stop by and see our facility, see what we're up to. We do have training going on almost every day. So if someone's in Vegas, please hit us up on some of the social media platforms and we'll arrange a visit.
Awesome.
Yeah, we draw a lot of athletes from Humboldt, actually. Jiu-jitsu is really up there.
It's huge. I mean, I was just talking to a friend who's a farmer out here who grows some of the best weed, in my opinion, and he does jiu-jitsu regularly as well. And so it's like, there's something to this, and we can get some of these, I don't know, like some of these really cool partnerships between like what weed is actually in the people's systems, the athletes themselves and performance, and then like bringing in the science to put it all together.
Well, we encourage anybody from the medical industry to come to our place and check us out. We'll give you as much data as we possibly can. We're really into it. We want to break the stigma, and if we can help with your research or anybody's research, we're willing to do that.
Heck yeah, amazing. I will absolutely take you up on that.
Great.
So for anyone else who's listening right now, how can people find you?
You can go to highrollerzbjj.com. We're also very active on Instagram. You can just look us up, High Rollerz BJJ. And we're very easy to communicate with, and we're very open. So please reach out.
Yeah, and I'll put the links to that in the description of the podcast episode, so people can easily click on those links. Is there anything else that you think that people should know?
No, I just think everybody in America should be training jiu-jitsu. Whether you're a cannabis smoker or not, you should train jiu-jitsu. There's a gym by your house, so start training jiu-jitsu for the future of America.
All right. That's an awesome way to end. Done. Cool.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Cool. See ya. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more, you can follow me on Instagram at Exploring Cannabis and Exercise or at Dr. Ogle, or you can visit my website at whitneyogle.com. If you want to support this podcast, you can sign up for Patreon at patreon.com/exploring cannabis and exercise. This podcast was produced by Haley Montowski, and the music used on this podcast is called Bonfire Cauliflower, created by Isaac Joel. Make good choices out there.